To find its way through the world, a honeybee relies on a sophisticated array of physical cues. It navigates using the position of the sun, patterns of polarized light, and familiar visual landmarks. These visual systems are paired with specialized biological sensors capable of detecting both electric and magnetic fields. A honeybee in flight naturally accumulates a positive electrostatic charge. When that bee approaches a flower, which possesses its own electric field, the electrical relationship between the insect and the plant physically changes. This electrosensory apparatus developed over millions of years, evolving to function against the relatively consistent background of atmospheric electricity and Earth's geomagnetic field. A subtle, naturally occurring electrical and magnetic architecture defines this landscape, allowing the bee to navigate a sensory world invisible to humans. Over the last century, humans have rapidly introduced complex, artificial electromagnetic fields into this historically quiet natural environment. This infrastructure has transitioned from early, extremely low-frequency transmission lines to modern radio-frequency telecommunications. Specifically, the deployment of next-generation wireless networks has shifted environmental power into millimeter wave bands operating above 6 GHz. Shifting to these higher frequencies introduces wavelengths that physically approximate the size of the honeybee's body. This geometric overlap leads to a phenomenon called resonance, allowing the pollinator to absorb radio frequency power with significantly greater efficiency than it absorbs lower frequency signals. This is a view of high-voltage transmission infrastructure, which produces extremely low-frequency electromagnetic fields, typically at 50 Hz. Early peer-reviewed research tested these 50 Hz fields to determine if artificial electromagnetism could affect insect biology. Under those specific experimental conditions, scientists observed measurable deficits in honeybees, including diminished success during foraging flights and reductions in aversive learning. Modern radio frequency signals, like those used by the cellular antennas shown here, operate in much higher ranges, such as 900 MHz. Natural geomagnetic fields, 50 Hz power lines, and 900 MHz wireless signals are physically distinct phenomena that behave differently in biological models. Because of these biophysical differences, historical data gathered near low-frequency power lines cannot be used to predict how bees will react to modern millimeter wave environments. Next-generation wireless infrastructure utilizes even higher bands, ranging from 2.5 GHz to 120 GHz. Moving into these upper frequencies triggers a specific interaction known as the resonance phenomenon. Frequency and wavelength have an inverse relationship. As environmental power shifts to bands above 6 GHz, the wavelengths become physically shorter, eventually matching the exact length of the honeybee. Because its dimensions match these shorter wavelengths, the body acts as a resonant receiver. Numerical dosimetry shows the result. Shifting just 10% of environmental power to these higher bands increases the insect's absorbed power by a factor of 3. At these specific millimeter frequencies, the honeybee's physical size triggers an exponential increase in energy absorption, ranging from 3% to 370%. To track where this resonant energy penetrates the bee's biology, scientists utilize 3D micro-CT tissue modeling. This modeling shows that radio frequency absorption is highly heterogeneous. The energy does not distribute evenly across the insect's mass. At 6, 12, and 25 GHz, maximal absorption occurs deep within the brain and inner organs. This deep tissue penetration is absent at frequencies approaching 100 GHz. As frequencies reach 100 GHz, brain absorption drops, but absorption by the outer cuticle increases exponentially, up to 119-fold. The exact gigahertz level determines the depth of penetration, targeting physiological systems based on frequency alone. These numerical dosimetry simulations are corroborated by live animal testing at the Pavlov Institute of Physiology. In 2020, researchers exposed honeybees directly to a 28 GHz millimeter wave 5G router. Following 24 hours of active exposure, the researchers documented significant changes. The bees exhibited impaired short-term memory and suppressed sensory and food excitability. The study also revealed a physiological response, finding elevated heat shock protein 70 in exposed insects. Heat shock protein 70 is a universal cellular marker, indicating the organism is experiencing physiological stress. The resonance phenomenon predicted by physics manifests as neurological disruption and cellular stress in living specimens. This data takes on greater importance when we move from individual laboratory bees to the essential ecological service of wild pollination. A 2023 field study published in Science Advances observed real-world honeybee behavior in close proximity to an active electromagnetic field source. Researchers documented significantly fewer honeybee visits to the California poppies located near the field source. Because the flowers received fewer visits, they experienced measurable reductions in seed production. Altering the cognitive and foraging behavior of a pollinator species cascades directly into the reproductive failure of the local flora that depends upon them. Current peer-reviewed research does not prove that electromagnetic fields are the sole cause of declining global honeybee populations. Honeybee health is governed by many factors, including pathogens, parasites, pesticides, and habitat loss. However, anthropogenic millimeter waves introduce a physically resonant variable that must be factored into health models. Given the rapid deployment of next-generation infrastructure, expanded real-world field research is an urgent necessity. Before assuming a technological alteration to the environment is biologically insignificant, we must first understand how other species actually perceive and absorb their world.